We are living in a country where we have local, state, and federal law. Here in the crime genre community, we have dealt mostly with state courts. We watched many trials. We have, looked at legal documents that are state documents. Never talked about federal court. Well, folks, right now you've got the Alexander brothers who are in federal court right now. They are being tried for rape and human trafficking and all of these things. But ultimately, we all know, to some degree anyway, that there aren't cameras in the courtroom in a federal court case. We can't go in and watch this happen and unfold. The adjudication of a federal case is reported on by the media, and you can be sure that if Don Lemon goes to trial, that the media will be sure to report on it, just as they are reporting that the federal government does not have a case against Don Lemon, okay? But why is there a federal case instead of a state case in Minnesota? Why isn't the state going after Don Lemon? Because they don't want to go after Don Lemon. The federal government wants to go and have a case against Don Lemon. What makes it a federal case? What makes it a state case? A case is heard in federal court instead of a state court when it involves U.S. constitutional issues, federal laws, crimes crossing state lines, or disputes over $75,000 or more between citizens of different states. There are civil, there are criminal, there are all kinds of cases that can go to a federal court. Now, people are focusing now on immigration, and have immigration laws been broken? Federal courts, which have lifetime appointed judges, generally offer more standardized, stricter procedures, broader discovery, and harsher, less flexible sentencing guidelines than state systems. How many of us knew this? OKJ knew that there's not cameras in the courtroom, and I kind of understood when I took a few courses in college about federal courts versus state courts, but I had to find out for myself, and we will apply federal court cases to Don Lemon, okay? That's what we're going to do. The federal conviction rate in courts, whether it's civil or criminal, is generally about 90% conviction rate. Primarily because most defendants plead guilty. Maybe this is OKJ's talking to y'all about something that's going to eventually happen. Because I can tell you now, I don't think for 1 second that Don Lemon's going to take this all the way. I just don't believe he's going to. And then you have to ask the question, when you're running down your news feed there and the media's reporting on Don Lemon and they don't have a case and all of that, well, why don't you just allow OKJ to talk to you and reveal legal documentation from the federal government in its charging documents of Don Lemon? Good evening, Jet Set J. Hello, Fancy Nancy. Hello, Astrological Plates. NF Mom, destroyer. Oh, I am. I am a hillbilly. Although I don't live on a hill, I could be a redneck too. But, then again, who are you to call me a hillbilly? Are you the type of person that wants to slap a label on me? What kind of person are you, huh? Why don't you think about that? Why don't you focus on yourself? Find out who you are instead of labeling and judging other people. How about that, huh? Hello, Mr. M. Hello, Mary Claiborne. How are you? Y'all, Mary's in here. My neighbor Mary Claiborne is in here. Donna says you should have been a detective. Mr. M says, well, difficult subject today. Federal law, wide subject, really. Yes, it is. But we are going to look at the federal government's probable cause affidavit. Did we not go through criminal cases here on this channel of probable cause affidavits? It's up to you to decide whether the federal government has a case against Don Lemon and these other people that entered a church to protest it. So again, 90% success rate for the federal government. Factors like extensive pre-charge investigation and the trial penalty, harsher sentences for losing at trial contribute to this, leading to fewer acquittals. There are fewer acquittals, y'all, and more convictions according to Pew Research Center. I can't say that word, Pew. I guess I'm a hillbilly because these words get in my southern tongue there. Well, folks, let me just be clear with you. The federal government is all powerful. It is all powerful here in this country. Not all powerful over we the people. Guess what, y'all? We the people gave the federal government all their power. Some people are like, no, KJ, the federal government shouldn't do this and the federal government shouldn't have all this power. Well, nobody's out there trying to change a damn thing, are they? Really? Come on now. The federal government and national security, y'all. You think about that. You think that someone here, an old 54, almost 55-year-old woman out of Tennessee knows anything about the threats coming into this country or national security as a whole, whether it's with the people? We've given all power to the federal government. We have ourselves to blame for it. And maybe, just maybe, the protest out here, the people have got buyer's remorse. But the bottom line is that Don Lemon is going to feel the full wrath of the federal government, regardless of what the media tries to make it out to be. He's not going to take this to trial. It's going to be a plea agreement. It's going to be somewhat of a slap on the wrist, but he will get convicted of what? 3 charges, y'all. 3 charges. You just wait and see. But why is the rate of the federal government's law arm, y'all? Why do they have such a high rate of conviction? Federal prosecutors often build cases with overwhelming evidence before charges are even filed, y'all. They know that anytime a federal law enforcement charges these people through the federal DA or any of these people file these charges, they already know how it's going to turn out. NF Mom says federal government don't play. They're going to make sure they're dotting their I's and their T's are crossed. And I agree with that. I've heard of ex-members doing what is called Kingdom Hall cash. They probably left before cops showed up, and I guess y'all are talking about this. As I recall, church leadership was linked in some way as ICE, says Mark McGarry. But anyway, why such a high rate? I mean, are we really going to depend on the news media to educate us about Don Lemon? Because I promise you this, go ahead, get off this live stream, go type in Don Lemon, and every one of these media people are saying they're not going to be able to get a conviction on him. It's not going to happen. They'll drop the case, or that it's just all kabuki theater and all that. They are damn serious. And Don Lemon's high dollar attorney understands that, and we'll get to it. I'm going to share with you the federal government's case against Don Lemon. Okay, that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to read it out, and I'm going to say, hey, you listen to the legal document, and then you decide whether the federal government has a case against Don Lemon. So tomorrow, or maybe this evening later on, when you see a news headline saying nothing's going to come of it, then you can put two and two together. So the rate is high because of the strong evidence. And let's not forget that even in plea agreements, that in and of itself is a slam dunk for the federal government, right? Trial penalties. Defendants who exercise their right to trial and lose. Guess what happens to them, y'all? When they want to roll that damn dice. This ain't no state court with Chad Daybell talking about he's not guilty of anything. This is the federal court system. They face more of a harsher sentence if they take it to trial. And over 90% of these cases, whether it's through immigration, whether it's constitutional issues, whether it's crimes crossing state lines, or whatever the federal government has jurisdiction over, they're going to get theirs. You better believe it. And only 1%, y'all, 1% take it to trial and they are found not guilty. 1%. Go on, type it in, look at the statistics. I'm looking back at least till 2022, 23, 24, 25, and now 26. That is including civil and criminal cases. 1% acquittal. So these media organizations, which this is really kind of, I don't know, beeping my own horn here because y'all know how I feel about media influence. They can put all the freaking headlines they want about how Don Lemon is really not going to be in any trouble or anything like that. But I guarantee you, he won't get acquitted and he will reach a plea deal, because if this dumbass wants to go and take it to trial, his attorney is smart enough, one of the best attorneys in the nation. He knows if he's convicted that there's harsher sentences involved. So again, the rate of conviction with federal courts is 90%, y'all. Okay, and that's not even plea deals. That's just a conviction. Strong evidence, plea bargaining, trial penalties, and then, of course, federal prosecutorial discretion. Prosecutors have significant power in the federal system. Now, what has Don Lemon allegedly, what has the federal government alleged in their indictment that we're going to read? And by the way, this isn't the media wants to talk about these judges said, no, we're not going to sign it. It's frivolous and all this and that. I would rather see a grand jury indict someone. Those are citizens. And that's exactly what Don Lemon is up against. So what has he been charged with? Do you know? Or is it all about he shouldn't have been in that church and that's all you give a shit about? You don't care about the ins and outs of the law. Justice. Justice through understanding means a lot of things to a lot of different people. And if somebody wants to just go along with the media and say, well, it's really about was Don Lemon a journalist when he did what he did? Or what? That's really what it comes down to. I will not accept freaking education from the media, regardless of what media it is. I'm going to look for the answers. 18 USC 241. That's the first charge that Don Lemon has been charged with, known as the conspiracy against rights. Is a federal statute making it a crime for two or more persons to agree to injure, threaten, or intimidate anyone in the United States in the free exercise or enjoyment of any constitutional or statutory right. Okay? And what I see is intimidation. Because I saw Don Lemon's, his big clickbait grifter live stream there. They intimidated those churchgoers. It is commonly used to prosecute hate crimes and conspiracies against civil rights, carrying penalties of up to 10 years in prison or up to life or death if death or kidnapping results. And we know it's not on the extreme side. But I will make the case right here on this channel, OKJ does not agree at all that Don Lemon and these protesters conspired with one another to go into a sacred place of worship and disrupt it and stand in the way of people that said, get out, and they would not leave. They were blocking the aisles and all of that. It's just as real as it gets, y'all. We are talking fact here. So yes, that's the first charge, 18 USC 241. Well, here's the details of it. You don't need an overt act. Y'all remember in the Chad and Lori Daybell case, conspiracy to commit first-degree murder and all that? There had to be an overt act. You don't even need an overt act to do this. Unlike many conspiracy statutes, 241 does not require the prosecution to prove that an overt act was committed in furtherance of the conspiracy. And I want you to remember that. No overt act, but you're going to find out in the federal government's probable cause affidavit, there were plenty of overt acts. You just wait and see. Also, the scope of the rights. The statute protects rights secured by the U.S. Constitution or federal laws, such as the right to vote, freedom of speech, freedom of religion, and the right to housing free from intimidation is some examples, but we're looking at the freedom of religion. How can Don Lemon go into this church conspiring with these people? He said it himself, y'all. This is not my theory. This is on his own damn live stream. He needed the money. He needed the clickbait. He didn't give a shit about the people in that church whatsoever. He thought it was fun. And during it all, what's he doing through it all? You need to hit that like button. You need to subscribe to my channel and all of this stuff. He was laughing and smiling. He didn't care at all about these people going into a house of worship to praise their God, to have some sacredness in their life. It's one of the few places. It's one of the few places that these people in the United States can go where all this bullshit is going on all over this country. So you got no overt act required with 18 USC 241. the scope of the rights, as I've explained. And again, the penalties, fines, and up to 10 years imprisonment. And I don't care either way if Don Lemon went to jail. But he sure as hell needs to be convicted of it, and he needs to pay his damn fines, and you can be damn sure he's going to pay that high dollar attorney of his. You better believe it. And what's the second charge that Don Lemon has been charged with the federal courts, y'all? 18 U.S.C. 248A2 of the Freedom of Access to Clinic Entrance prohibit using force, threat of force, or physical obstruction to intentionally injure, intimidate, or interfere with any person lawfully exercising what, y'all? Their First Amendment right of religious freedom at a place of religious worship. Violations carry penalties up to 1 year in prison for a first offense and up to 3 years for subsequent offenses. So all these media organizations out here is going, that's about abortion clinics. Well, they're not letting the people know the truth, that it also includes religious beliefs. So, this again, y'all, I'm doing a little bit of this justice through understanding, not only about media influence and why they're lying to a lot of people and downplaying what Don Lemon and other protesters did, but this is what the federal government alleges. And y'all, you just wait. You'll see what I'm talking about. So then again, the key aspects of 18 U.S.C. 248A2 and B, prohibited actions in 2A. The statute forbids intentionally injuring, which he didn't injure anyone physically. But I guess the question is did he traumatize those children who thought their parents were going to die that day? Okay? What does injury mean, huh? Intimidating? You think Don Lemon went in there live streaming? Did you think he intimidated anyone? Or interfering with individuals at a place of religious worship through force, threat, or a threat of force, or physical obstruction. Again, I challenge you. Watch Don Lemon's, unless he's taken it down. I don't know if he took it down or not. If his attorney hasn't already told him to take that shit down, I don't know. He's no one's going to silence me. No one's going. So he should keep it up, and I want you to go and watch the whole thing and apply the federal USC codes that he's been charged with, and then you can come up with your own answer. Jet Set JP says, my God, at church of all places for anyone to go to make any political statement. Give me a break, y'all. They've got people out here that say that these churches are a hotbed of white nationalism. And they're all in there, they're conspiring all that. You think these media people wouldn't love the precedent of being able to go in there without being invited and sit in there and mess with the parishioners in there? If Don Lemon does not get convicted, this damn country is going to hell in a handbasket. That's what I'm talking about. He's going to have a plea deal, y'all. You just wait and see. It's all going to play out. You're going to come back, and no, I'm not wrong this time. He's going to have a plea agreement unless he really wants to be the big liberal martyr and take it all the way to trial, which they will convict his ass. 90% conviction rate. His attorney knows this good and damn well. So again, 18 U.S.C. 241, 18 U.S.C. 248A and 2, and A2 and B. And what is the definition in federal law of interfering? Does anyone believe Don Lemon didn't interfere? with that church service? Did he get a personal invitation to go in there? I mean, did you watch where he was over in a parking lot in another area? We're fixing to do this. And I'm not going to tell you where we're going. You think that guy didn't know? I told y'all. I absolutely told you. His ass is grass. This includes restricting a person's freedom of movement, which was right there on the screen. He was standing in front of people trying to get a response from them. Do you think they wanted that shit in their face? They were there to worship. They were there to exercise their religious freedom. Freedom of movement or rendering passage to and from a place of worship unreasonably difficult or hazardous. Well, did anybody see those members of that church fall down on the ice out there trying to get out of the house of worship there? And how when they told him to leave, Don Lemon didn't leave at all? Oh, he had more questions, didn't he? He had no respect. Absolutely no respect for the religious rights of these people in this church. It is absolutely disgusting. So the first offense on 18 U.S.C. 24A 2 and B is fines and or imprisonment for up to 1 year. Again, Don Lemon will plead guilty. He has to. And he'll pay fines because he don't want to spend a year in federal prison. His attorney's got his work cut out for him because I don't see where his attorney can say Don Lemon was being a journalist. And these media organizations are lying to America. That's what they're doing. They're telling them, all these people online and all over media world that, this is just Donald Trump wants to get Don Lemon and they'll drop it and all. No, they're going to take it all the way as long as it takes. Civil remedies, in addition to criminal penalties, the law allows for civil actions, and I pray to my God Almighty that these children that were traumatized and these parishioners that were scared, who had to leave the church and stuff, that they file a lawsuit. And if you'll look it up, they're weighing their options. I hope they take Don Lemon to the freaking bank because Don Lemon's going to have to pay his attorney a lot of money just to get a plea deal. How about that? And when these civil lawsuits come out, you just wait and see. There ain't no damn way that Don Lemon's going to take it all the way to trial. 90% success rate. And I just told you, they have clear-cut evidence, and I'm going to share it with you. The indictment. You ready? Daleen Browning says that side never goes to jail or prison. They get the judges to get them out almost same day. Well, I'll tell you this. The federal government's going to get a conviction on Don Lemon. It's going to be on his record. And they're also going to get fines from him. And then when they do that, you think these parishioners don't deserve some compensation? They're going to get it. You better believe as I look at you. United States District Court from the District of Minnesota. The state court don't want to do anything. These state and local law enforcement officials didn't do nothing to these people. They didn't do it at all. It took the federal government going to a three-panel judge. Two of them said no. One of them said they did have enough evidence, but the two judges outruled the one judge. And what did the federal government do? That was too important to too many people who have religious beliefs not to let this shit slide. And what did they do? They impaneled a grand jury, and they are going to nail Don Lemon's ass to the wall. So it is, United States of America, y'all. You just think about that. Let me say it again. The United States of America versus Nakima Valdez Levy Armstrong aka Nakima Valdez Levy Pounds, United States of America versus Chantel Louisa Allen, William Scott Kelly, aka, sorry about that, y'all. Somebody called in. Are you still here? Then we've got, do y'all hear me okay? Everybody hear me okay? Put a 1 in the comment. Sorry about that, the phone rang in. You can hear us. Okay, Teresa Moore. So then we've got Don Ronaldo Lemon. Okay? He is United States of America versus Don Lemon. You got United States of America versus Jerome D'Angelo Richardson, Jamel Lindell Lundy, Traherne Jean Cruz, Georgia Elise Ford, and Ian Davis Austin. Those are the defendants. United States of America is fixing to let everyone know that you don't go into a worship center or a church or anything like that and do what Don Lemon and these protesters did. He can't hide behind his BS about being a journalist. It's bullshit. So here it is, y'all. When you read the media reports on Don Lemon's arrest and what his attorney has, his statements come out and all of this stuff and how it's not going to pass muster and all this and that, here's the federal government's indictment with a 90% success rate on conviction. At all times relative to this indictment, the city's church, the church, is a Christian house of worship located in St. Paul, Minnesota. On the morning of Sunday, January 18th, 2026, at approximately 10:30 a.m., the church's pastor was leading the congregation in a service. In that service, the church's pastor and congregation were then exercising and seeking to exercise the First Amendment right of religious freedom at a place of religious worship, a right that is also protected by a federal statute codified at Title 18, United States Code, Section 248. After the service commenced, a group of approximately 40 agitators, including all the defendants named in this indictment, entered the church in a coordinated takeover-style attack and engaged in acts of oppression, intimidation, threats, interference, and physical obstruction alleged herein. And some of those protesters told those children who were in the pews that their parents were going to hell and all of this stuff. Y'all go watch Don Lemon's live stream that made him some moolah. You got him his clickbait, got him his subscribers, got him his views. Let's see how Don Lemon fares with the federal government. As a result of the defendant's conduct, the pastor and congregation were forced to terminate the church's worship service. Congregants fled the church building out of fear of their own safety. Other congregants took steps to implement an emergency plan. And young children were left to wonder, as one child put it, if their parents were going to die. And you make no mistake, if Don Lemon and his high-dollar attorney wants to take this to trial, you get them church members in there on the stand and they'll tell you just what Don Lemon and these protesters did. As a result of the defendant's conduct, the pastor and congregation, again, were forced to terminate the church's worship service. And I have to highlight that. Think about that. They're in their own church trying to worship their God, and they have to stop what they're doing because these people come in there who's got ill intent. So I briefly told y'all about the counts. Count 1, 18 U.S.C. 241, all defendants, conspiracy against right of religious freedom at a place of worship. The allegations set forth above in paragraph 1 through 4 of this indictment are re-alleged and incorporated herein by reference. Now let's get to another section of the federal indictment of Don Lemon, object of the conspiracy. Beginning at an unknown date and continuing to on or about January 18th of 2026 in the state and district of Minnesota, defendants, and I've named them all, so I'm not going to name them all again, conspired and agreed with one another and with other persons known and unknown to the grand jury to injure, oppress, threaten, and intimidate multiple persons, including the clergy, staff, and congregants of the city's church, in the free exercise and enjoyment of the rights and privileges secured to them by the laws of the United States. And because of such persons having exercised such right, namely, exercise of the First Amendment right of religious freedom at a place of religious worship, as secured by Title 18, United States Code Section 248C. All in violation of Title 18, United States Code Section 241, conspiracy against rights. So that is the object of the conspiracy. Then you got the manner and means. In order to achieve the object of the conspiracy, telling fellow agitators where to meet, to prepare for their operation, and exhorting them to be ready to mobilize. ICE refers to Immigration and Custom Enforcement. Overt Act 2, on or about January 17th of 2026, defendant Allen posted a similar flyer on her personal Instagram account, and they named the account. Overt Act 3, and remember, that first charge of Don Lemon, no overt act has to be at all proven. On the morning of January 18th of 2026, all of the named defendants gathered with approximately 20-30 other co-conspirators for a pre-operation briefing led by defendants Armstrong and Allen at the parking lot of Cub Foods at 1440 University Avenue, West St. Paul, Minnesota, 55104. Overt Act 4. At the pre-operation briefing, defendants Armstrong and Allen advised other co-conspirators, including defendants Kelly, Lemon, Richardson, Lundy, Cruz, Ford, and Austin about the target of their operation, i.e. City's Church, and provided instruction on how the operation would be conducted once they arrived at the church. Overt Act 5. On the morning of January 18th of 2026, defendant Don Lemon began live streaming on his internet-based show, The Don Lemon Show, where he explained to his audience that he was in Minnesota with an organization that was gearing up for a resistance operation against the federal government's immigration policies, and he took steps to maintain operational secrecy by reminding certain co-conspirators to not disclose the target of the operation, and stepped away momentarily so his mic would not accidentally divulge certain portions of the planning session. Overt Act 6. During a discussion with defendant Armstrong at the pre-op briefing, defendant Don Lemon thanked defendant Armstrong for what she was doing and assured her that he was not saying what's going on, i.e. was not disclosing the target of the operation. Defendant Armstrong explained that Operation Pull-Up was a clandestine operation in which she and other agitators would, quote, show up somewhere that is a key location where the targets don't expect us, and we disrupt business as usual. That's what we're about to go do right now. And the defendant, Don Lemon, said he would see her there. Now, if he wants to say that he didn't know that it was going to be a church, well, what in the hell was he walking into that church about? If he's so up on the civil rights of Americans, if he's a journalist, I would like to see any journalist go and do what Don Lemon did and see what happens to him in a federal court of law. Give me a break. But he did know. And you look on Don Lemon's live stream, when he's in the vehicle on the way over there, he says the word, we're going to a church. So he can act like he don't know shit all he wants. He knew exactly what was going on. And I told y'all that before the facts came out. Again, when it comes to federal government charges, these people already know they're guilty before they even charge them. Make no mistake. Over at Act 7, before heading to the church to join his co-conspirators, defendant Don Lemon advised his live stream audience that, quote, we're going to head to the operation. Again, we're not going to give any of the information away, i.e. operational details that would disclose where he and his co-conspirators were heading. You think Don Lemon is going to convince a court of law, a federal court of law, that he did not know that he was going to a church? Even if he could convince them of that, why the hell did he go in there? You just hear me on it. He is screwed. Over at Act 8, at the pre-op briefing, defendant Allen led other co-conspirators in chants that they would use at the church, including, this is what community looks like, and ICE is out of Minnesota. Urged her co-conspirators that they have a duty to fight for our freedom and a duty to win. And as the group prepared to head toward the church, directed by her co-conspirators to stay bumper to bumper, make sure everybody gets through the light, and confirm that everyone had the address. Everyone had the address. Don Lemon in his car on the way over there, he knew exactly. He knew where they were going. He knew it. Over Act 9, at the pre-op briefing, defendant Armstrong provided instruction and operational guidance to her co-conspirators, including the following. The first wave of agitators should enter the church essentially in an undercover capacity and position themselves around the church sanctuary. They should not sit together and should not wear anything that is activist identifying, and those who had anything activism identifying should wait and come in the second wave. It was an attack on religious liberty, y'all. These people, the first wave came in there and hid like the freaking venomous, evil serpents that they are, while these people are trying to worship their God. It is absolutely diabolical. Over at Act number 10, continuing on the morning of January 18th of 2026, all of the defendants got in vehicles and traveled with their co-conspirators to the church to engage in the planned takeover style operation. Over at Act number 11, while en route to the church, defendant Richardson told defendant Don Lemon, that they had to catch up to the others, and defendant Don Lemon replied, let's go catch up. And because he was still live streaming, Lemon instructed Richardson and an unidentified male, don't give away anything, i.e. don't divulge information about the operation, and advised his audience, we can't say too much, we don't want to give it up. So he can't say he didn't know. He is letting his live stream audience know that this is exactly, he knows where they're going. He knows what they're fixing to do before he steps into the church. And guess what? That's only one charge. When he is in the face of these people, that is obstructing them. That is keeping them from not only exercising their religious rights, but keeping them from leaving. In some instances, Don Lemon, when he was told to leave, he didn't leave. He finally left, but at first he didn't. He had to get enough of his content, don't you know? The grifter and the piece of shit that he is. Over at Act 12, continuing on the morning of January 18th of 2026, all of the defendants, together with other co-conspirators, entered the church. They entered the church sanctuary with the first wave positioning themselves among the congregants and the second wave led by defendants, Armstrong and Allen, commencing the disruptive takeover operation in which the first wave of agitators then actively joined. Over at Act 13, and that doesn't say anything about Don Lemon, but he was already in there. He was promoting the desecration of a religious church. It is pathetic, y'all. Over at Act number 13, as the pastor was beginning his sermon, Defendant Armstrong interrupted the service with loud declarations about the church harboring a director of ICE and indicating that the time for judgment had come. And other co-conspirators immediately joined in by yelling and blowing whistles in a takeover attack on the church, all of which quickly caused the situation in the church to become chaotic, menacing, and traumatizing to church members. And you better believe it. These church members are going to do affidavits, or they're going to come to testify if Don Lemon wants to pull away his butt cheeks for anything other than what he usually does. You just wait and see. Over at Act number 14, while inside the church, defendants Armstrong, Allen, Kelly, Richardson, Lundy, Cruz, and Austin, and others led in or joined with the co-conspirators in various chants, including Ice Out, Hands Up, Don't Shoot, and Stand Up, Fight Back, while gesturing in an aggressive and hostile manner, which congregants and the pastor perceived as threats of violence and a potential prelude to a mass shooting. Over at Act 15, while inside the church, defendants Armstrong, Allen, Kelly, Don Lemon, Richardson, Lundy, Cruz, and Ford, and Austin oppressed, threatened, and intimidated the church congregants and pastor by physically occupying most of the main aisle and rows of chairs near the front of the church, engaging in menacing and threatening behavior, for some chanting and yelling loudly at the pastor and congregants, and are physically obstructing them as they attempted to exit and or move about within the church. And they, thanks to Don Lemon, they have the evidence right there, 90% conviction rate. Don Lemon needs to either, plead out or take it to trial and have fun with other inmates for a year in federal prison. That's Don Lemon's choice. I think his attorney realizes the writing on the wall. Over at Act 16, while inside the church, defendant Austin stood with other agitators in and around the main aisles in the church to intimidate the church members and obstruct and interfere with their freedom of movement, approached the pastor and congregants in a menacing manner, and near the end of the operation, loudly berated the pastor with questions about Christian nationalism and Christians wanting to have their faith be the law of the land. And you know what? Whoever this fella is, this Austin fella, you know what? He is a piece of crap. Pure and simple. Has no, they talk about, oh, we all need to be created equally. We've got to fight for justice and all that. And yet they leave out that people who have religious beliefs have the right in the First Amendment to go in their church without these damn assholes coming in here and doing this shit to them. Over at Act 17, while inside the church, defendant Lundy personally participated in the disruptive takeover operation with other defendants by standing in the main aisle with the others and contributing to the physical obstruction and intimidation of the congregants, participating loudly in some of the chants. One saying that the targeted ICE agent must be out, and punched his fist in the air. And it wasn't the main pastor, but he was almost like a backup pastor. He was an ICE agent, but he wasn't even there. And yet they go in there anyway. It shows you the stupidity of these people. Over at Act 18, while inside the church, Defendant Cruz personally participated in the disruptive takeover operation with other defendants by standing in and around the main aisle with the others and contributing to the physical obstruction and intimidation of the congregants and participating in some of the chants. And you know what? You might be saying, well, KJ, you're talking about the other ones that the United States are going after. Doesn't say anything about Don Lemon. He was in there. He was live streaming all of this illegality, in between his smiles, in between his, y'all be sure to subscribe, go to donlemon.com and all this stuff. This man has no conscience. This man is a piece of shit. Over at Act 23, with other co-conspirators standing nearby, Defendant Don Lemon, Richardson and Ford approached the pastor and largely surrounded him to his front and both sides, stood in close proximity to the pastor in an attempt to oppress and intimidate him, and physically obstructed his freedom of movement while Lemon peppered him with questions to promote the operation's message. And there you go. Don Lemon was not a journalist. He was there in an activist role. He was in league with them. Look at his dang video at the beginning. He's giving that woman, the leader of it all, a kiss on the cheek in the parking lot before leaving to go over to the church. He is a liberal activist who don't give a shit about other people's First Amendment rights. Plain and simple. Over at Act 24, while talking with the pastor, Defendant Don Lemon stood so close to the pastor that Don Lemon caused the pastor's right hand to graze Don Lemon, who then admonished the pastor, please don't push me. I'll tell you one damn thing right now. I would love for Don Lemon to get up in my face because I got enough money for a freaking simple assault on that damn piece of crap. To stand that close to a pastor and then, don't you, like that, he wants the pastor to look demonized. He's the one up in the pastor's face. Over at Act 26, after causing most of the congregants to flee, you just think about this right now. In the United States of America, freedom of religion. You just think about it. These people that came in there to worship their God are fleeing their own house of worship. Just think about that. Think about that. How can that be legal? It's not. And the federal government's going to nail Don Lemon's ass to the wall. You better believe it. Oh, yeah, I know. He'll get a plea agreement because he's got a high-dollar attorney, but it's going to be on his record from here on out. He's going to be known as a man who tried to use his journalism as a shield so he could do activism because he has no love at all for people with religious freedom. Don Lemon absolutely has nothing to offer this world but lies and absolute negativity. And I hope he crashes and burns. And I believe now more than ever that Don Lemon has proven to the world, not only through his own behavior, but his money getting clickbait live stream on the whole thing. That is the poster child of what not to do here in America. The federal government don't play. Over at Act 27. Oh, wait a minute. When the congregants were fleeing in over at 26, some of the defendants and other agitators engaged in a chant proclaiming, "Who shut this down? We shut this down." They said, "We shut this down." We shut down people's free exercise of religious worship here in the United States of America. And Don Lemon was right there. He was the activist with them. Oh, he wasn't there as a journalist to chronicle it. He wasn't, or document it. He was absolutely in league with them, and he's going down. Over at Act 27, as one congregant reported to responding police officers, some of the agitators blocked the stairs leading to the church's child care area and made it difficult and hazardous for parents to retrieve their children, causing some to take alternative routes in and around the church, their own church home, the place that they worship their God. Just think about that, y'all. Over at Act 28, at one point, defendant Don Lemon posted himself at the main door of the church where he confronted some congregants and physically obstructed them as they tried to exit the church building to challenge them, to challenge these church congregants with facts about U.S. immigration policy. And if you'll look at the video, none of them wanted to speak to him. And he was confronting them while they were fleeing from worshiping their God. Don Lemon's a piece of shit, through and through. Over at Act 29, as a minivan full of children was preparing to depart from the church, Defendant Kelly walked in front of the minivan and angrily yelled at the occupants, and Defendants Armstrong and Fort stood in front of the minivan while Fort interviewed Armstrong. So, that's what we got, y'all. And thanks to Don Lemon, thank you, Don Lemon, that you have screwed yourself by thinking that somehow you could get away with this. The media is going to continue to report they ain't got a case. This is against his free press. I guarantee you this. Don Lemon's going down through and through. You can be sure of it. JP says, I hold these journalists to a higher standard. He has education and should have known these fundamental rights. He don't care. He don't care about the religious freedom of these people because it's not in line with his lifestyle, don't you know? He's resentful that other people think differently than he does. He don't care. He absolutely doesn't care. And these other people named in the indictment, they're going down too. Absolutely going to go down. And you know what would be so rich? Besides the fact that Don Lemon's attorney's going to get rich because Don Lemon's going to have to pay him a lot of money and he's going to have to pay court costs and all that stuff. You know what's rich? Some of these defendants just might turn on Don Lemon because these people don't have any moral, ethical fiber. None whatsoever. If I haven't proven anything here tonight, y'all, number one, the media will tell you what they think of Don Lemon's indictment. And they're all for Don Lemon. But they absolutely are lying to America. The second thing is the federal government don't play around. They are going to take Don Lemon and these other protesters to town because Don Lemon was an activist along with all the rest of them. And there ain't no damn way in the United States of America anyone should enter a house of worship to protest shit. That would be just like a Jewish man going into an Islamic temple and protesting what the Palestinian did, or vice versa. Palestinians going into a Jewish synagogue. It don't happen here in America. And I'll tell you this right now. I'll tell you this. Who are they? These people right here that are going to take Don Lemon and all these people down, and it's going to be a precedent, by the way. Let me get to it, if I can find it. Here it is right here, y'all. Pamela J. Bondi, Attorney General. Harmet K. Dillon, Assistant Attorney General, Civil Rights Division. Jesus A. Osset, Principal Deputy Assistant Attorney General, Civil Rights Division. Robert J. Keenan, Acting Deputy Assistant Attorney General, Civil Rights Division. Orlando B. Sanza, Counsel, Civil Rights Division, U.S. Department of Justice, and Daniel N. Rosen, United States Attorney, are going to nail Don Lemon and these protesters to the wall because they know they've got the goods. And to do anything else, if they don't act on this, and which they are, and I thank God for that, if they didn't act on it, then what would happen? Oh, Don Lemon got away with it. These protesters got away with it. Let's just forget about these people going into their church service trying to seek sanctuary with their God, to get away from all the bullshit politics and everything going out in this crazy ass world. They go in there to serve their God, to worship their God, and these people have no right coming in there. Plain and simple. So, for some reason, people want to get all pissy with me and unsubscribe. I don't give a shit about subscriptions. I talk about the truth of the matter. And if you have a disagreement with OKJ about this, then you need to ask yourself, what education do you have outside of legal documents? Are you listening to CNN? Are you listening to MSNBC? Are you listening to all these talking heads? They don't know shit. Go. Research it yourself. That's what I'm talking about. And the Rays know. They know that justice through understanding means a lot of different things to a lot of different people. But I'm sitting here today to tell you that when it comes to federal courts, these people are screwed. They already know they're guilty before they even file the charges. So they've got the evidence. And Don Lemon's attorney is going to have to break it to him if he hadn't already. It's going to be a plea deal. This ain't going away. It can't go away. It was a serious, serious thing that happened. And if the United States federal courts don't take this up and convict these people, then there is another precedent that is set, and that is a slap on the wrist, and the case goes away, and then other people say, well, the case went away, so now I can go into a church. Now I can scare the parishioners. Now I can traumatize the little children in there. Now I can make the congregants flee their own house of worship, fall down on the ice and everything else. It was in his live stream. Don Lemon just laughed and made sure everyone had, hey, subscribe to my channel, because there ain't a national news organization that would hire that damn asshole for anything. He's self-serving, and he is absolutely going to have his ass nailed to the wall by the federal judiciary. Make no mistake. Leave your comments. Let me know what you mean, when you mean it, and when you say it. And as always, you know I love you, Rays. Thank you for always being there, and keep on looking.